I thought this abandoned factory had ghosts. The truth was so much worse. My grandfather used to say that some buildings hold on to memories like lungs hold on to air. They breathe them in and out year after year until the history stains the very plaster. I never really understood what he meant until I found the old Plasmata doll factory on Filatayru Street. It started with whispers at a cafaneo in Pagrati. Old men hunched over their coffee, talking about a place that had been rotting since the 80s. They mentioned screams on nights when the wind was just right, and strange rust-colored streaks on the high windows that looked like dried blood. It was just local folklore, the kind of stuff you hear in every neighborhood with a derelict building. But this one stuck with me. The place had two lives. First, in the 30s, it was Tanatus Therapeutics. A man named Lykorgos Vekris ran it, a real snake oil salesman who got rich selling fake quinine to the poor during the malaria outbreaks. He cut it with industrial chemicals, and God knows what else. People didn't get better. They got worse. They died hallucinating, bleeding from their mouths. After the war, the factory was reborn. It became the home of the Plasmata dolls, those porcelain nightmares with glassy eyes and unnervingly human smiles that were famous for a while. The building itself was a fortress of decay, but the neighbors were the real walls. They watched. From their balconies, through their window blinds, they watched with a kind of territorial suspicion that was almost feral. My first attempt was a joke. I had this free ghost hunting app on my phone, the kind that claims to record EVPs. I went after midnight, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I only made it to the rusted front gate before a floodlight from the house next door pinned me to the spot. An old man, a silhouette on a balcony, screamed something at me in Greek I didn't catch. I ran. Back in my flat, the recording was just static, but listening to it in the dead silence of 3 a.m., I could almost hear it. A tiny, faint giggle, like a child hiding just out of sight. It was probably nothing. The wind. But I didn't sleep that night. A week later, I had a cheap EMF meter I'd ordered online. This time, I went at dusk. The meter started chirping the second I got near the fence. I found a spot where the bars were bent wide enough to squeeze through. The air inside the grounds was heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and rot. As I crept toward the main building, a dog in the adjacent yard went ballistic. In the ensuing panic, I tripped over a tangle of roots, my knee landing hard on a shard of broken bottle. Blood welled up instantly, dark and hot. As I scrambled back through the fence, I glanced up. An old woman, a yayaya in a black shawl, was standing motionless on her balcony, just watching me bleed. That night, I dreamed of small porcelain hands tugging at my blankets. The next time, I was ready. I went at noon, when the neighborhood was sleepy in the summer heat. The gate wasn't locked, just held shut by rust and time. A hard shove, and I was in. The inside of the factory was a graveyard. Dust motes danced like ghosts in the shafts of sunlight slicing through the grime on the windows. There were piles of doll parts everywhere. A porcelain leg here, a hollow torso there. The crunch of shattered ceramic under my boots was the only sound. My EMF meter screamed its head off in what must have been the old pharmaceutical wing. It pulsed, a steady, rhythmic spike. Like a heartbeat. I switched on my phone's recorder and just stood there, breathing in the history. Later, when I played it back, I heard it. A whisper, clear as day, weaving through the static. Paisy, weaving through the static. Begasei. Begasei. I felt a pull, a curiosity that drowned out the fear. I started up a set of metal stairs to the second floor, but a step gave way under my weight. I fell, my arm catching a rusted edge of the railing on the way down. It wasn't a scrape. It was a deep, jagged gash from my wrist to my elbow. I stumbled out of there, clutching my bleeding arm, the neighbors' faces appearing in windows like silent accusations. The wound got infected. A hot, angry red that throbbed with a pain that felt older than the injury itself. This place was marking me. I spent the next few weeks laid up, the infection turning into a fever. I couldn't go back, so I went online. I fell down a rabbit hole of municipal archives and obscure historical forums. The story of Thanatos Therapeutics was worse than the whispers. Vekris wasn't just adulterating medicine. There were rumors of clinical trials, of him using the city's unwanted, the orphans and the street kids, locking them in the factory's basement to test his toxic formulas. When the doll factory took over, many of the same workers were hired back, people who knew the building's secrets. That's when I found the folklore, local tales of Paideia Phantasmata, the ghost children of the fever years. They said the souls of Vecris's victims were trapped in the factory's clay, their anguish baked into every single plasmata doll that was ever fired in the kilns. My arm eventually healed, leaving a thick, ugly scar. I bought a thermal camera. I had to know. I went back on a moonless night, the streets silent and empty. Inside, the factory was different, colder. The thermal camera screen lit up with shapes. Small, child-sized blotches of deep blue, huddled together in the doll assembly room. I felt something brush against my leg, an impossible, finger-numbing cold that vanished in a second. I was filming, trying to keep my hands from shaking, when a streak of red, a hot, vibrant slash, shot across the camera's view. An orb, they call them. This one looked like a drop of blood falling through the air. Drawn by some unseen force, I went to the basement. The old vats from the pharma days were still there, huge, rusted hulks that smelled of chemicals and decay. The floorboards groaned overhead. Then I heard it. Not a whisper this time. A scream. A chorus of high-pitched, terrified screams echoing from the very stones. I dropped the camera. The sound of it shattering on the concrete was lost in the wail of the dead. I clawed my way out of that basement, not caring about the noise. Thorns from overgrown bushes tearing at my clothes and skin. Out in the relative quiet of the yard, I collapsed, gasping for air. The image of porcelain faces melting into screaming skulls burned into my mind. I couldn't shake them. I started hearing whispers in my own flat. My girlfriend said I was talking in my sleep, begging someone named Lykorgos to stop. She left. I don't blame her. I was becoming a ghost myself. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I bought a spirit box and went back, in broad daylight this time, too broken to care about stealth. I didn't even try to go in. I just stood at the fence, the box hissing and crackling as it scanned the radio waves. Amidst the static, a voice formed. Not one, but many, overlapping. Samada, Maz, Ethapson, lies, they buried us. That was it. The neighbors were on me in a second. A younger man, probably the grandson of the one I saw first, grabbed my shirt. He didn't yell. He just looked at me with a desperate, haunted pity and said, "Some things are meant to be forgotten." Then he shoved me, hard. I hit the pavement, the air knocked out of me. The nightmares got worse. I was in the kiln, my skin cracking like porcelain. The whispers were constant. I knew I had one last chance. August 15th, the Dormition of the Theotokos. A massive holiday. Athens empties out. The entire street, the entire neighborhood would be gone. That night, the air was electric. A storm was rolling in, the sky a bruised purple. I didn't take much. A flashlight, my phone, and a crowbar. The gate groaned open. The factory was waiting. The wind howled through the broken windows, a mournful symphony. I went straight to the basement, to the vats. The whispers were a roar now, a physical pressure in my ears. Underneath the largest vat, I saw it. The faint outline of a trapdoor in the concrete. It took everything I had, but the crowbar finally broke the seal. The air that rose from the opening was foul, a mix of damp earth and something acrid, chemical. I descended into the dark. I descended into the dark. It wasn't a cellar. It was a pit. My flashlight beam cut through the blackness and landed on them. Dozens of small, cloth-wrapped bundles. No, not just bundles. Bones. The tiny skeletons of children. And scattered among them, little personal things. A rusted toy car. A single, small leather shoe. A handful of marbles. This was Vecris's secret. He didn't just let them die. He buried them here, under his factory. When the doll company came, they dug up the clay from this very ground. The residue of the chemicals, the agony, the memory of these children, was mixed into the slurry, molded into smiling faces, and fired into an eternal half-life. The neighbors weren't guards. They were jailers. Descendants of Vecris's men, sworn to secrecy for generations, terrified of what would happen if the truth of their grandfather's sins was ever unearthed. As I touched the little shoe, it happened. My mind fractured. I wasn't in a pit anymore. I was in a fever dream, my body on fire. I could taste the bitter poison on my tongue. I could feel the rough hands dragging me into the dark, hear the scraping of shovels, see the earth falling from above. It wasn't a haunting. It was a memory, stored in the soil, screaming to be heard. A single clear thought cut through the chaos, a girl's voice in my head. Pez twos. Tell them. A bolt of pain shot through my skull and the world went black. I woke up outside the factory gates as the sun was rising. My clothes were torn and caked in dirt. There was blood on my hands, but I don't know if it was mine. I filed an anonymous tip with the Archaeological Service. I don't know if they'll do anything. I see the neighbors sometimes, back from their holiday. Their glares are gone. Now they just look at me with a hollow, weary recognition. They know I know. I'm leaving Athens. I have to. The scar on my arm still aches when it rains, and sometimes, when the city is quiet, I can still hear a little girl whispering. She isn't asking for revenge anymore. She's just thanking me. The factory might be quiet now, but I don't think I ever will be.